morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. I hope you have a fantastic day. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm actually going to do some live commentary. I hope you guys enjoy it for the first time. With that being said, I kind of skim over it. I'm going to post a video that you guys can watch if you click on the link in the top right here regarding my raw footage of my plat push. If you guys want to see it and enjoy it for that, you can definitely go check it out that way. But this video is going to be a little bit more of a commentary. So with that being said, let's dive into it, and we're going in blind. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and I wanted to bring you guys a little bit more of a different approach for something new that happened in today's gameplay for Plat Arena. So, if you guys aren't aware, we already had a setup period where there was a blind reset. So basically, everybody went in. You can't see, as you see on the screen here, you can't see any of the person's information outside of just the fact that you see their team. So their names, the players' names, their clan tags, and all that stuff is pretty much kind of gone. All you're going to see is basically, I believe, their player power and the champions they selected in the positions they put them in. So, with that being said, we're going to talk about some of my approaches and how I kind of approach this particular arena set, where I placed, my overall thoughts on what I believe Arena was intended for them to do, like the reason why they did blind arena reset, and then also my opinions about whether or not that goal was achieved with this blind reset. So, with that being said, let's break it in. I'll be honest with you guys. I kind of didn't know what to expect going into this, but I tried to do some things that were best practice in terms of how I would approach particular fights. Like, for example, if you see this right here with Gizmac coming in here after kind of setting up and getting the initial boost speed win originally, instead of buffing with Gizmac, and since Marius is in play, I want to keep that stone skin up before I get to my actual turn where I'm going to do my damage, because I want to avoid enfeeblement, right? So little things like that are kind of like a big key. I'm going to jump around a little bit in some of the different fights and whatnot. There's some that we thought we were going to win and that we didn't win. There's some that we thought we were going to lose that we won somehow. It comes with the territory. But to kind of give you an idea about what I chose for my teams, you'll see a lot of this round. I kind of leaned heavy towards Stock, Gizmac, Shuzen, and Gallius. Now, I have a little bit of a contention on mine. If you pay attention here, you'll see that my Gallius, although he is +1, is only 1 star awakened. So his efficiency is definitely on the lower end side of things. And I'm going to take a brief moment here just to kind of pause here. I don't know if you guys saw that. There's another team that I'm going against. And this is kind of something that I think is very important for players that are looking to get their feet wet or to dabble into today's top meta for PvP. What you're going to notice, especially with Blind Reset, is that you're going to be exposed to champions that could do a lot of different things that could technically cripple your efficiency in using certain comps. So, for example, in a team like this, they kind of have the answer to countering speed booster type teams, which is what Shuzen and even Stock to some degree is actually known for. But what I did to combat that was I put Ashnar in play in the last spot instead of someone like Gallius. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, they're both defensive force affinity nukers, so there's that. But with Gallius and his passive, he's actually able to kind of just come in, and any burns that we put on are actually taken from being a negative and turned into a positive for us, in a sense, where instead of doing damage, it's healing us. And if you're not familiar with it, we're going to go and keep playing here. You'll see that, as the fight goes on, I'm going to boost. I'm basically going to treat it as if that Volcanos is no different than anybody else. I'm going to boost. I'm going to get burned here, but my stone skin's not getting crippled. I'm not taking damage. Matter of fact, I'm healing from doing all these extra buffs. Now, a important thing to consider, when I came into this, everybody outside of Shuzen was already in stone skin. So coming into this, whenever I buffed or did healing, or if I did any type of boosting or whatever, Nell is still active and she's proccing her abilities. But because I was under stone skin, only the ones that are not under stone skin are receiving the poisons. Now, mind you, this is a very aggressive approach to Arena, and that's kind of the difference between safety versus super aggressive and what would be considered risky is time. And in plat push, when you start getting into the last couple of minutes, it's very important that you're not only effective at being able to win some fights, but also doing them very efficiently too as well. So a lot of times you'll see a lot of comps come out that are basically very aggressive, and they're all in on this particular rotation of damage, and that's pretty much it. That's mum's the word on that one, right? So in this particular regard, I boosted with Shuzen, and she's got plenty of poisons that would typically kill her. And even I believe Stock right here, if you look at this part right here, you'll see that he actually acquired 2 poisons, which is dangerous with a really well built Nell. So we're kind of a little bit on the cautious side, but I'm going to keep it going. I basically buffed out with Gizmac, flipped him, went to go slam, and then boom, the damage was done, right? I didn't get the decreased defense on him, so I kind of just kept going aggro. I'm going to keep attacking him just to do as much damage in, and then I'm going to let, for lack of better words, my fourth player in this regard, or my fourth champion in this regard, clean up, and that's where Ashnar comes into play, and that kind of helped us out a little bit. Let's skip forward to another quarter of the thing. I recorded for over an hour and a half, so I kind of want to just kind of break down some extra things here and there, but some things that have been really, really technical or really, really difficult to kind of navigate is, like, what happens if you're outspending a team comp like this? Well, you're kind of dead in the water almost, right? Because the whole goal is to get in, stop their stone skin, like, get aggro, and then force them and their passives to kind of go active, right? So, like, in this particular regard, paying attention to Siegfried in this team, which actually can be kind of annoying if you're not careful. You know, he has the block debuff because he's got Feral on along with Savage, I'm going to assume, or Lethal. With Lightning Cage protecting it, so it's very hard to strip that buff because normally it's protective, depending on how many stars of the blessing he has. It's kind of like almost malnutritious to try to do a team that's kind of burn synergistic, like the Gizmac stock comps, against that without the ability to kind of get through that or be able to address what happens afterwards. So what we're going to do here is we're basically going to pop his passive, and we're going to force him to turn around because he's the last one standing in his team, right? And what ends up happening is he gets his turn after Gizmac resolves his. So what I do with Gizmac is I put the Pain Link on. He's going to go for the revive, which is typical of what you see in most Siegfried defenses, and then everybody gets block damage. Well, that's where Coxus Maximus comes in. We got Gallius here, who, when he is in his second form, his A3, I believe it's like Sonic Torture or something like that, does... you see it right there on the screen. It basically goes and ignores block damage. So I'm able to do big damage here and practically wipe the team. And only thing that's left is the Arbaeus, who the only reason why she survived that was due to the fact that she had Swift Parry, I believe. And that's where the Unkillables, you know, his stuff goes through block damage in terms of Gallius, but not through Unkillable. So it's a little bit tougher. And that kind of worked out for us. So despite not being hyperly effective and hyperly like effectively built in a sense with Gallius, I kind of try to make him work this round, and I think that's what the main focus was, to try to see progress with pushing in that direction of getting him online a little bit more. The blessing is really a big deal for Mythical, so I went on a hunt to try to get them as soon as possible, and unfortunately I came up a little short with this last big event, but neither here nor there. All right, so we're back to the same thing. They got Gizmac in this one with Nell, and you see Marishka and Galathier. So Galathiers are very difficult to deal with when it comes to Gizmac. Gizmac being negative affinity, it automatically puts a negative interaction there. And I want you to see something else I did right just now that I kind of messed up on. When I got to Gizmac's turn here after the initial boost and the stock boost / burning off the stone skin, I didn't buff up with Gizmac here, and I could have actually, because I still had some stone skin to work with, but I decided to flip and just go straight into damage. It's neither here nor there. It could have made a little bit more of a substantial impact of the total damage that Galathier had, and that's perfectly fine. I kind of just continued the onslaught and do more damage. I should have targeted him. I believe he does the big AoE if your target is under HP burn. So I believe I targeted him this round. He was over 50%, I guess, if I had to guess there. So we were a little bit on the underside of things. So that's kind of bad. We're kind of hoping at this point now that Gallius, his passive is already down, and pretty much we can use our A3 to clean him up from here. So let's see how it goes. Fortunately, it was not enough, but we're so fast, and this particular defense that we went against was not overly complicated to a point where it was going to do too much. So what we did here is we tried to apply some poisons, which obviously high resistance build Galathier is going to resist, but the burns finished off the last little bit, so he was basically right at the cusp of basically dying, and thankfully we had just enough to finish it up. So we went over there. I'll tell you one thing I did do a lot in this fight was I slowed it down tremendously. I was having conversations with some of my clannies in the Discord in terms of typing out to them while I was doing my push, and we were just passing information along in terms of like, yo, is this your defense, by the way? And like, I even found one of my clannies at one point didn't attack him because I know better, you know. Like it's a stacked team, and you'll see it when you see it right there. The +4s across the board. It's dangerous, you know what I mean? Like it's difficult if you're not prepared for it. And obviously, Ashnar is a very, very strong champion that could deter like Gizmac comps, which is what I was primarily prepared for in this particular reset. So Is it overcomable? Yes. I tried some different approaches that some successful, some not successful, and it really depends on how they're built. But for the most part, you get the idea of it. It's like we're trying to accomplish hitting effectively. So slowing down the tempo for this blind reset is something that I noticed that I experienced throughout the course of this experience. And I think that's something that I want to note compared to others where it's like a little bit more rapid fire. You're just constantly battling, you're constantly fighting. And that's what you're trying to do, right? So let's see if we can fight someone. You'll see here. I even at one point typed this. I'm looking at options to fight with. I think I know some of these who these defenses belong to and whatnot. I knew it because we were talking about it and I peeked it out. So this means right here, if I'm seeing some of my own clannies and I'm seeing other defenses that are maybe not even my own clannies at this point, we're kind of hypothetically thinking this, okay? That means that I'm in a pretty good position in terms of being in the upper 50s, maybe even upper 20s or 30s or whatever. And there may be a certain point throughout the recording where I kind of take a little skim at where my position is at. Something I will note, I don't know if I showed it at any point. Let me see if I can find a quick little rundown. Very, very quickly. There's a section right here, if I'm going to disappear for a second, where you see the top players. You can click that, and it still technically shows you the leaderboard of where position people are at. So you can kind of put 2 to 2 together. If you're at this number of points, and you can see your position, and you're starting to see people who are kind of in an area where you're very, it's comparable in terms of points, then when you do your refreshes or when you get to a new page that you're fighting on, the chances of you seeing people adjacent to you are very likely. So you can kind of put 2 to 2 together. Almost not necessarily exact, but you can kind of see it. So that is something I wanted to kind of comment on and kind of be bringing to the table of you should be aware of this, Play-Im, that you kind of shot yourself in the foot. I think the whole premise behind being blind reset is that you don't know what you're fighting or who you're fighting. You just know what you're fighting, right? And even to some degree of that, there's a lot of comparable defenses. You see plenty of Marises, you see plenty of Crixies, you see a lot of Niames and some Theodoses here and there. And it gets to a point where you're fighting these type of champions, but you're not sure if you're fighting the exact same one. So one little bit of an issue is that one, you can kind of use associative information to kind of find out who is who, and that's kind of number one. It doesn't completely deter away from the aspect of blind reset, right? Blind arena reset. So a little bit of a miss there, if you want my opinion, player, if you're listening in. But nevertheless, I mean, we still kind of balled out and did what we could. There's a couple of fights where I should have thought about the structure of my team a little bit more effectively. Like, for example, I didn't have a direct answer of dealing with the Theodosia here, especially if she got the revive off, which ended up costing me, I think, a couple fights. I tried this, the team in particular, once or twice. And I also made the mistake of buffing before I went in with damage. And I thought that was the reason why I lost this fight. But to be honest with you, I think there was more underlying reasons that I did not pay attention to that ultimately costed me a lot more value this particular fight. So I think I went in twice. Yeah, I went in again. This time I buffed up and I used my abilities a little bit more effectively. Honestly, I'm going to contribute some of that to a little bit being tired. I mean, it's 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm running on willpower at that point, But we got the buff strip, and then we ended up, instead of buffing and then flipping, we immediately flip, which means we still retain our stone skin before the turn resolves, allowing us not to get the enfeeblement there, which is very, very important. We do our damage. We get the kill. Here's where it gets a little messy, and this is where I would say my effectiveness of a couple things on my Galleys still needs to be improved upon. And one in particular is the speed is an issue. I feel like my damage is very lackluster, and then also benefiting from aspects like Life Harvest, as you can see here, proccing, is not as effective because the blessings are severely low. So I could blame it on blessings all day long. I think in general, I probably would have been better off maybe considering an alternative like maybe Marius in place of Gallius here because of that. My main thought process was I wanted to have a champion that could deal with the Niame, and I kind of achieved that, kind of didn't achieve that with my approach here, and that's what ultimately costed me my effectiveness. So no matter what I did here, after I do my damage or whatever, I looked at my abilities oh shoot, I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place here. Now I'm giving them the opportunity that they can definitely respawn, and that ultimately led to this fight being a bit of a failure. So lessons learned, right? You try to figure out how you can do it. And then also another thing too is not being able to fully clear out certain team members or certain really built up Naises even after having what I needed to win was kind of a problem. So you'll see some failures in this recording here that I'm kind of highlighting a little bit. But one thing that I felt like I was a little bit more comfortable with was dealing with not only Volcanos but also Nell, with the way that we approach this particular offense lineup. I made an adjustment here because I saw that they had a issues in that was +1, so I was a little worried about that. And I don't know if I went in with this fight in particular because I realized that they had a Niame, so like even if I were to use the Hedgie wouldn't do anything there. So I ended up reversing that idea and went back to my original comp. I basically said, screw it, I'm going to challenge the speed race here. Whoever's faster is faster, and the result was me. I was faster, so we ended up taking that advantage to us, doing our standard like build up, getting the stone skip. They all have burn, so his ability when he goes to his A2 here is going to go through block damage, which ultimately leaned into a complete one tap. Now, my Gizmek is actually under revision right now, and that's going to improve over time, but he's already kind of packing a punch, right? So very, very happy to see that. I also make another adjustment here again where I'm using the stock comp, but I noticed the Volcano, so I immediately swing over to bring in the Ashnar instead of Gallius, which makes the Volcano's passive part of this fight less of an issue. We still have to worry about Nell, we still have to worry about maybe stock getting a turn to cause some problems there, but overall, I just immediately kind of did the normal status quo, get in there, go ham, go home. Obviously, weak affinity hits could be a problem, which is where Ashnor's kind of in the barrel for if we need it, but thankfully, you know, he gets his extra turn if he kills somebody with the A2, so we come back in again with another A1, which didn't weaken this time, and that's pretty much good. And I will say this is one of the things that's kind of like apparent about this game that you can love or hate. I think for me, I'm less complaintive about it due to the fact that I'm entering into this fight with the acknowledgement that I'm picking a damage dealer against two champions that are red. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're asking for it at that point, right? There's a chance for weak hits and stuff, so we go in with that knowledge of mind, and hopefully with like a comp like this, we have our answers to being able to still effectively do what we have to do. So we come in, we see them revive after the Marishka passive replock. One of my biggest fears there was just worrying about maybe Commodus being able to control the team and still do too much. So what I did was I kind of approached it from the aspect of I'm just going to get the board wipe clear. And I had a choice. I could have maybe injected the Gizmek into play. My first thought process there was that if I did that, then he would be weak affinity chance hit, and that's a gamble. So I went for the A1, which is still technically a gamble, but I still wanted to kind of just try, all right, if I can stop him from doing the big damage side of his kit, and he can only do A1s, I could survive an A1 with a HP-based nuker and a defense-based nuker, and then a pretty tanky, subjectively tanky, support roster to kind of keep it going. So I noticed that we were able to survive it after getting the lock hit, and then I just kind of followed up with prerequisite damage. I went to the side that had the neutral affinity, which was with Ashnar, injecting him in play and just letting him go ham, go home, and we kind of went from there. I don't know if you noticed, but like the Ashnar comp was in defenses was actually kind of like almost difficult to a point where I was like, you know what, I need to avoid that, and it kind of was. I think I should have brought my Marius in play a little bit more often. One of my issues is that, like, since his last re-gear, I'm still kind of, like, restructuring some of my gear. I got new pieces. Those pieces need a little bit of investment and excuse. But basically, if I were to throw my Marius into play in its current situation, it would be a little bit of a problem to have him designed with the turn order that I wanted to go in. So I'd want him to go before maybe Gizmek would go, so that we could be effective at being able to do damage, or maybe even drop the stock and put him in place of that, so that like I can open up the team with Marius, and then the rest of the team can kind of come in and do what they have to do. And I didn't have that prepared, which is honestly kind of my fault, if we're being real. And I think next go around I'll try to like figure out a little bit of a more effective approach. So I noticed that they had a swift parry on the Marishka, which was super unfortunate. I think that ultimately cost us. Let's go back a couple seconds here. I want to see what the damage output was like. So it looks like here, I had pretty much everything I needed to prep up. We got the decreased defense. It didn't land on him. He also has a reaction proc, and I see a reaction proc over here too as well. So 2 reaction procs were super unfortunate. And then a swift parry proc as well, which means that she was going to survive that hit no matter what. And because I didn't land a decreased defense there, I'm not entirely sure why that happened, but he ended up not getting that. It could have been, and let's see, let's go back a little bit when we put this out. It could be reflection or deflection. There could be a lot of different things that can kind of accumulate as to why about it, like what caused that trigger to happen. Let's pay attention to our debuff bar. So I saw counterattack, ignore shields, ignore damage. This is all the passive procs and whatnot. Fierce Battler is his, as well as the other one. So there is no real justifiable, as far as I'm aware, I didn't see anything that would kind of like quantify why he didn't get the decreased defense. If he did, he probably would have died. So my Gizmac dying there is kind of something unforeseen, unexpected, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe you guys that know a little bit more can get into the comments and let me know. I'm down. But yeah, so like this automatically is like, uh-oh, we have a problem. So I was like, I want to make sure that my Gallius can kind of get us through this fight. So I threw the lock on the A1 from Shuzhen onto the Taras, which I believe deters the counterattacks from happening, since it's like an active effect or active ability effect. I'm not sure exactly the semantics of that. You have to double tap. So I'm going to use the A3 here, Sonic Torture. We got the kill on him, which is good. And then we didn't fully kill the Marishka or the Galathea here, so that was actually super unfortunate. Now, the revive is going to happen. We'll get a little bit of Life Harvest proc. We're still kind of in a bad spot because he can revive, he can cleanse, he can get super aggressive. It's like basically the pick of the litter here. So he's going to revive, which means that we're back to reset mode. So I need this hit to do some work. So the inject happens, and I think I go for the A2. There's no block damage up, so we kind of lean into the A2 this round. Okay, we landed this time. She didn't get it this round, which is kind of unfortunate. And we practically killed everybody. So that's good. Now, at this point, my thought process was, okay, I need to make sure that I can get him into play when we have the revive happen. So we do the A1. I could A2 here to inject, but I was like, you know what? We're going to wait. We're going to let that go. Because when he finishes his round, they're going to respawn. She's ready to go, right? I don't have my A2 up. So what's my play here? I need to start controlling some people. So I try to control the Galathea. Now he has his A2 up. We're still not safe, right? But then I'm fast enough with the Shuzhen, and this is kind of just a whoof moment. It's not really something I prepared in mind, but I had the ability to get him back into play. Okay, he's up and running. We got the A2 back up again. Boom, throw it again, and we get the fix. Took a little bit longer than I wanted, but I would argue that like that fight could be probably consolidated down by half if I had a better build. So obviously better gear because his builds is incomplete, and then obviously like blessings would be like a big deal. I think that whole like little concern about like turn meter at the end there would have been super circumvented, because like Life Harvest at the bottom end versus the top end is a totally different story. You know, like having a full 6-star would be nutty. So a little bit of an interesting experience from my end. It shows remnants of like efficiency, like it's there, it's good. I just need to nurture it more, and that's what I'm going to try to do as time goes by. So something we observed and something we were looking at. And then another thing too, you'll notice that we're starting to get against a lot more teams that are a little bit higher in blessings, and you're going to see that fluctuate quite a bit. Plenty of times where we are going against players, the more you get to the top end, the more aggressive the builds get. And let me see if I can show you an example. Yeah, I think this was a lost fight because I ended up having a mistake here. But like you start seeing more pluses and whatnot. A little bit of a comfort conversation, I would say here. I think I do hit this one, yeah. Even though they're +1 and whatnot, I'm less. I mean, like I'm also kind of getting there myself, you know. Like I have 1 champion, 2 champions that have empowerments, right? But it's getting to the point where like comfort, and that's going to be one of the biggest things that I would probably like leave a lot of you viewers here that may be interested in plat push. Comfort. You're gonna be exposed to things outside of your dynamic of norm, and as you get higher and higher to the leaderboards, it becomes a lot more of like a game of chess, like understanding a defense and dissecting that. And with blind reset, it's kind of hard to identify that because you fight the player, you fight the ideology of the player, the person that's built the defense up, and you're not able to see that in a blind reset, which is kind of a negative in my opinion. You're not able to fully identify a person. It's like pros and cons, right? For one, it's more free-for-all, which is technically accurate, and it's basically, you know, balls to the wall, for lack of better words, right? But then the dynamic of being able to approach a defense and dissect it and improve against it and whatnot, that's lost in this experience of blind reset. So something I wanted to kind of throw at you guys as like a food for thought is, by obtaining your anonymity, you're now exposed to the experience being diluted to just a gamble of RNG versus different teams that may have X new relic or X new piece of gear that changes the tide. And if you known that they had that relic, you would be able to effectively target them in a different pattern, in a different way, a different strategy, so that it encompasses that. And I think that's something that is lost in this experience. So I would caution that Plarium takes this under consideration, that depending on what your goal or objective is, which we'll talk about in just a moment, will define whether or not this change is positive or negative in that regard. So I leave it to Plan to answer that question, and I think they did with their post about why. Their why for blind reset was to deter players from clicking up, for lack of better words, which has been around since the culmination of plat reset, as far as I'm aware. I started playing this game back in 2022, so there's a couple years before me, so predecessors would be able to answer that a little bit better, but I believe the structure of Classic Arena and plat reset has always been as it was prior to this blind reset. So clicking up has been something that's happened nonstop, and it kind of gives value to being in a clan that's pretty powerful, but it also gives you the dynamic of alliances and the opportunity to manipulate the structure or the integrity of Classic Arena by being able to either cheat or do things that would affect the overall experience of the community when playing this game. And I think that's what they were trying to accomplish with that. However, let's take a look at some of the results. I think not so much this video. I do have a screenshot I'm actually going to switch over to of the leaderboards. And I'm going to show you both the last week and I'm going to show you this week, okay? So, last week, shout out to the Map Boys, we got the W, right? This is not blind reset. So, I want you to take a look at some of the clans that are in the top leaderboards, and you kind of will see a lot of consistency in particular clans. So you see Mad, Immortal Elite, and so what is it? Sacred Pandas, Savage Pandas, a little bit of IPR, a little bit of MPF, and then it kind of mixes the bag a little bit. There's John, who is in TORT, MBF, and then some miscellaneous people here and there, GNL. Mad, this is the old secondary clan or alternative clan that we used to have. So shout out to TP. He's technically still Mad, so you know we rock with the boy. And then I think DK, which is Danish Kings or something like that. I'm not entirely sure their name, but you kind of get like an idea of like the members that are super active in Classic Arena, right? It's a very small, less than handful amount of clans, right? And I want you to look at this week's reset. Congratulations to everybody that got it. I believe it was SF Ideal that got the trophy this round, so congratulations to him. And you'll kind of notice same similar aspect. You have Mad, you have SP, which are the dominant two clans that are active in this particular mode. A little bit of IPR, a little bit of an MBF, some GNL, and then one DK person, the DK Kazura, one FC. And it's the exact same thing. So, I would argue that was the objective accomplished? I think the answer is yes and no. I think on one hand, it's free-for-all. We basically attacked whatever we felt like we could attack. And if we did identify that someone was a particular defense that we did, I abstained from it personally, but that was out of personal choice. It's not even so much that I was afraid to hit one of my clans. It was just more so an acknowledgement of that's an uphill battle for me considering the resources I have, the tools I have to try to disassemble that team. And at that point, logistically speaking, for my own personal interest, it would be malnutritious to try to push and accomplish an attack right there. It would take too much time, and there's still a strong likelihood that I could lose, right? So I try to be more effective in my attack in that way. So I abstain from hitting him. That's the truth of it. There's only one, and shout out to DD. He placed, I believe, 11th here in this screenshot, according to this. It was his defense that I peeped out. I knew it was him. He's got one of, if not the one. I like to brag about it, but I don't know if this is accurate or not. But I kind of claim him to be one of the people who has the strongest Ashnar in the game or something like that. You know, I use it as a joke, but truthfully, he has a pretty well built up Ashnar, and you can obviously see it, right? He's got in his defense. So I avoided it. I was like, I'm not hitting a +4 and a +4 and a +4. I'm like, I'm good, bro. I'm gonna find my freebie where I can get it and keep it going. You know, maybe I can get a couple more points to kind of keep myself at least in the top 100 or whatever. You know, and I thought I was gonna get hit a lot more, to be honest with you, right? So fast forward, and I'm hitting, I'm schmooving, I'm doing my things and whatnot. I think I have my result here, and I want to show you guys this here. Let's see if I think this is the video here. I'll show you guys what I had for my round here. We ended up placing number 43, so we were in the top 50. Not my best, not my worst. I think overall, I felt like my attack was solid. I think it was okay. It was okay. I think it was a very interesting experience. And that's what I said. It was a very interesting one, to be honest. So I think that was a really cool way to kind of like illustrate. I don't know how I felt about it. I felt like if we were just blindly going in, just attacking, yeah, it's fun. It achieves that for me. But I think from a strategic standpoint, being able to challenge yourself versus a very known player, a known account that has prominent assets to make a very robust defense, being able to dissect that and be able to like crack that code or crack that cookie and like figure out like what's my way into this is something that is lost in Blind Reset, and I don't like that in particular. I feel like if we can find a way to combine the two experiences to have something a little bit more robust, I think that will help out tremendously. But I think at the same note too, I don't blame people for feeling the way that they feel about like the sentiment. I think the general sentiment is if you're not in MAD, if you're not in SP or insert random clan name here, then you know you're collectively going to get ganged up on. And the reality of it is it's partially true. I would argue that like it's not because we're trying to gang up on people per se. We're just trying to attack people that are just not our own. So like for example, we had a rule to during Plat Reset, don't hit your peoples. You know what I mean? That's kind of like something that I think that's universal for a lot of other clans. So I would argue that this is a much more paradigm that's kind of been created by the community so much more than the game mode itself. Blind Reset to some degree, just like how I personally was able to at least identify one defense, it doesn't completely remove the ability to identify players. And I think that my scrutiny is going to be very minimal here because I don't have a direct answer for it, and I would rather bring a solution to the table than just a negative per se. But being able to see the leaderboards to some degree on the top player side of the button, like right here that I'm kind of like hovering over, the top players tab is something that kind of exposes who you potentially could be fighting because of cumulative or associative information. The other part is once you have experience, and this is kind of maybe more of an awareness that I have due to the fact that I'm more often than not battling amongst some of my peers in my clan. You get to see comparable defenses or like you kind of get an idea of like I know the mind behind this one because I have been fighting around or I fought that person before. Another great example would be like understanding I'll use someone from the leaderboard real quick, and this is kind of like no shade or anything like that, but Simo B, very, very strong potential count. I'm not sure who's driving it during Plat Reset, and I don't particularly care. But I noticed that they had like a Theodosa, and I, being someone who's acquired Theodosa, I have been actually very excited about wanting to try to build her out more elegantly for PvP. Not to mention Bill. Bill's another one that I noticed that uses her. But in particular, from previous resets, I know that Simo B has thrown Theodosa into play. Not so much more Bill. I'm not saying Bill hasn't, but I don't remember if he's actually done that on a much more consistent basis. So I was like, okay, if I go into a fight and I'm going down my list and I'm looking and I see a +2 Theodosa that's fully awakened, odds are that's probably Simo. And that associative information still allows me to kind of see it. So like it almost defeats the point of like why hide the names in at that point if you know that's what you're going to be. If you could still if you still know the information. Now, obviously I'm using my anecdotal evidence and that I think that could be argued upon all day long and I'll take that. But I think the reality of it is it's not entirely hit the mark, and I hope that they use information to perfect it or make it more optimal without saturating or deteriorating the experience of being able to target and practice and or explore cracking down a defense. And I think that's one of the fun parts about the game is like, all right, I'm going against another person's mind. They're using these specific set champions. How do I overcome this? And that is actually a fun dynamic in the top inside of Arena where when you have a expansive toolkit, which is like various champions, different builds, that can be very fun to explore, right? Now, that's not to say that there isn't a meta that could maybe crack down on some of these teams effectively or whatever. It's just a realization of something you want to be kind of aware of in a summary word. So with all that being said, I think this was a pretty cool, interesting experience. Win or lose, whether or not like Mad gets the trophy or not, I think one of the things we take pride in is having fun exploring things related to Arena. And I'm not going to speak for them. I'm going to speak for myself. Being able to explore and dissect the team's defense is kind of really fun. It's enjoyable. I'm not perfect at it yet, and I got a lot to learn. So, I'll take my humble ass whoopings as I need to. But I would hope that player finds a way to kind of still keep that that experience genuine, even if we're not knowing who we're fighting, and it's kind of hard, and we have to find a balance between those two. And I think I implore players to deploy their available assets to make that as effective as possible, so that people can enjoy that experience more. I don't know if blind reset is going to be the norm, but we shall see. Problem number 2 is that I'm not one for talking about drama or dramatic things, but I heard that there is potentially people that use programs to maybe cheat, that uses like speed engines, which speeds up animations, which is not the normal experience of a player playing the game legitimately. And that could cause some problems to people's ability to be able to manipulate outcomes favorably and be more effective at being able to target more players and get better points and whatnot. And that compromises the integrity of the leaderboards and in general the plat experience. So I would implore Plarium to look into if there is any possible, potential, plausible, undeniable, indisputable, evidence that would give prevalence to that they go out of their way to not only reprimand and punish that, but find ways to prevent that from being a thing. People are going to try to crack the code of the game and do things that will manipulate the game in favor for themselves. If they have the means to do that, they will do it. And I don't want that to be the case. I want this to be a genuine experience. I want to lose off of my own successes and failures, or win off of my own successes. And I don't want it to be because of my positioning being a little bit lower due to the fact that a player is cheating. That is not good. Not good. And I don't want that to be the case. And I would hope that Plarium looks into it. But that's my overall consensus. We did rank up in this regard. I think we got, like I said, the number 42, which was pretty cool. I would like to, or 43rd, sorry. I believe one of my clanies actually was like right above me by 1 point. I was like, oh, I could have been 42. It could have been pretty fun. But regardless, it was fun. It was a fun experience, and I'm hoping to continue growing my account to a point where I can get more stably in the top 20s and stay there. I think that's one of my biggest issues. I can get in the top 20s and top 15. I think the highest I got at one point, I think during this last one, was like rank 16. And then you take some hits, you take some losses on the offensive, and that just brings you down. At one point, I fell down as far as like 100 and something after a couple hits, and I was like, oh, Jesus. So I started clawing my way back up, and, we tried to find our answer, and, people are still pushing up too. So, like, sometimes your win, you're still staying in the same stat because everybody else is going up too as well. So it's a challenge, right? And that's fun. That's fun for me. I don't mind it. But yeah, I hope this was like a pretty informative way. I kind of wanted to just talk to you guys about like my approach to the experience of live plat reset, being blind for the first time. I thought that was a pretty fun and engaging experience. I hope that people are aware that, like, regardless of the clan tag that you own, if you want to enjoy this mode, get in there and get active, man. I don't think being in match stops me from getting my butt kicked. You know what I mean? And even with blind reset now, it's even more apparent that, like, I'm gonna end up getting hit by my own gladiators. You know what I mean? And that's fine. I don't mind that. And I think you guys should also be willing to have that experience yourselves. If there's a reason why you're not effective at being able to accomplish it, like, learn from it, grow from it. That's how you bring to light more consistency in your experiences. And I think that's something I would like for players as a whole to be able to enjoy, from their own dynamic. I don't know. I would love for players to be able to experience that better. And I think that's something that you're not going to be able to experience unless you give it a shot. So, with that being said, I hope you guys don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always remember, stay ascended.